The safe stood wide open, spilling with cash, bundles stacked in chaotic piles, more money than most people would see in a lifetime. In the soft glow of his office lamp, Thomas Mitchell sat perfectly still in his leather armchair. His eyelids drooped as if he were asleep, but behind that calm facade his sharp mind was alert, watching every detail. For the past 2 years, Diana Jefferson had come into this office every night. A black woman in her early 30s, she carried herself with quiet dignity despite the exhaustion of double shifts. Alongside her came her 6-year-old daughter, Jasmine, a bright-eyed little girl with braids, pink gloves on her hands, and a curiosity that never faded. Tonight, however, Thomas had prepared a test. After discovering his own business partner had embezzled $3 million, Thomas's faith in humanity had shattered. He was 45, a self-made billionaire who had clawed his way from nothing, yet betrayal always seemed to lurk closest to him. He began to wonder, was everyone corruptible? Was there a single honest soul left in this world? So he created a trap. He left the safe wide open, a fortune within reach, and waited. As Diana dusted the shelves, Jasmine wandered toward the desk. Her little eyes widened at the sight of so much money. Her small body stiffened as if the stacks were glowing treasure calling her name. Thomas tensed, ready for disappointment. Surely even a child wouldn't resist touching it. But then, something unexpected happened. Jasmine didn't grab the cash. Instead, she tilted her head, frowning at the messy piles. With all the innocence of a child, she began organizing the stacks, lining up bills by size, smoothing them flat with her tiny pink-gloved hands. "Mommy," she whispered. "Mr. Thomas's money was messy. I fixed it, just like you taught me, with our coins at home." Diana spun around in alarm. "Jasmine, don't touch the boss's things." "But Mommy," the girl replied softly, "he'll be happy when he wakes up and sees it tidy." Thomas froze. A lump caught in his throat. This little girl, who probably never had more than $20 in her life, had not only refused to take a single bill, she had cared enough to make it neat, to bring order out of chaos, out of respect. At that moment, Thomas felt something break inside him, or perhaps something heal. What he didn't know yet was that this child's small act of honesty was about to ignite a storm, one that would expose corruption, prejudice, and cruelty at the highest levels of his company and change all of their lives forever. If you think a billionaire has nothing to learn from a 6-year-old,
stay with me, because this story will prove that the greatest lessons often come from the most unexpected places. Over the following weeks, Thomas quietly observed Diana and Jasmine. He learned that Diana worked 2 jobs, nights cleaning,
at his corporation, mornings at a doctor's office, just to keep food on the table. Jasmine tagged along, sometimes finishing homework in waiting rooms, sometimes playing quietly while her mother scrubbed. But what struck him most was not the struggle, it was the values Diana instilled. "We return what isn't ours," Thomas overheard her telling Jasmine one night. "Even if nobody is watching, honesty is worth more than money." Diana's life had been brutal. Orphaned at 9, shuffled through foster homes, working minimum wage jobs while trying to finish high school. Pregnant at 22, abandoned by the EO father, left to raise Jasmine alone. Yet never once had she asked for charity. Moved, Thomas quietly arranged for Diana's pay to be increased, disguised as a staff adjustment. It was the least he could do. But someone noticed. Someone who would soon become their greatest enemy. Richard Blackwood, vice president of operations, was everything Thomas despised. Entitled, arrogant, and born into privilege. He had inherited his shares from his father, one of the company's founders. At a meeting, Richard smirked. "Thomas, why are we wasting extra money on janitorial staff? Especially that one. Diana is excellent at her job," Thomas replied curtly. Richard scoffed. "Excellent? She's a cleaner. Give people like that an inch, they'll take the vault. It's in their nature." The word "people like that" burned in Thomas's ears. Later, that evening, Thomas watched from his office as Richard cornered Diana in the hallway. "I know you're being paid more than you deserve," Richard sneered. "I don't know what kind of favors you're doing, but it stops now." Diana paled. "Sir, I don't—" "Of course you don't understand. People like you never do. Just be grateful and keep that child out of here. This isn't a daycare." Jasmine clutched her mother's leg, eyes wide with fear. Thomas's fists clenched. Richard had crossed a line. Unbeknownst to Richard, every word was being recorded by the very security system he himself had insisted on installing. Thomas wasn't just going to stop him. He was going to destroy him. He called Marcus Chun, a former FBI investigator who had helped uncover the embezzlement scandal. "This time," Thomas said, his voice cold, "we're dealing with racism, abuse of power, and conspiracy. I need airtight evidence." "Against who?" Marcus asked. "Richard Blackwood." Marcus chuckled darkly. "That spoiled parasite? This will be easier than stealing candy from a baby. Men like him always leave a trail." As if on cue, Richard escalated his attacks. He fabricated reports in HR claiming Diana was habitually late. He pressured managers to fire her. He confronted her in the parking lot, accusing her of special services for her raise. And finally, his dirtiest plan yet. He bought a $15,000 Rolex and planted it in her cleaning cart. Then he marched in with security guards. "Well, well," he said theatrically, pulling out the watch. "What's this doing here?" "Theft in progress." Diana's face went white. "That's not mine." "Of course not," Richard mocked. "It just appeared, right? Guards, call the police." Jasmine began to cry. "Mommy, what's happening?" At that moment, the office door opened, and Thomas Mitchell stepped in. "Hang up that phone," Thomas said evenly. "Thomas!" Richard smiled, nervously. "We caught her stealing your watch." "My watch?" Thomas raised an eyebrow. "Richard, I've never owned a Rolex. I wear an Apple Watch." Confusion spread across Richard's face. Marcus entered, holding a tablet. "Angle 1, he said, playing crystal-clear footage of Richard planting the Rolex in the cart. "Angle 2. Angle 3. Richard's jaw dropped. "Oh, but there's more," Thomas said. He nodded to Marcus, who projected screenshots of Richard's private social media posts. "Need to keep those monkeys in their place," Marcus read aloud. Gasps filled the room. Diana covered her mouth in shock. Then came audio recordings. Richard, on the phone with his father, plotting to fabricate charges against Diana. 3 journalists, who Thomas had invited, stepped forward. Cameras flashed. "Richard Blackwood," one reporter demanded, "do you deny conspiring to frame an employee because of her race?" Richard's face crumbled. "You can't use that. I have rights." "Yes," Thomas said calmly. "The right to remain silent. Because anything you say can and will be used against you." The police arrived moments later. "Richard Blackwood," Detective Harris announced, "you're under arrest for conspiracy, racial discrimination, and attempted defamation." As the handcuffs clicked shut, Jasmine whispered to Thomas, "Mr. Thomas, will the bad man stop scaring Mommy now?" Thomas knelt, meeting her eyes. "Yes, sweetheart, he'll never bother you again." Diana Jefferson no longer wore a cleaner's uniform. She now walked the halls as Director of Human Resources, a role Thomas created for her after learning she once studied business before life pulled her away. Jasmine thrived in the best private school, already dreaming of becoming a lawyer to defend others. Meanwhile, Richard sat in prison. His wealth stripped, his family abandoned him, his racist posts plastered across the internet forever. By the time he got out, he was unemployable, a broken man, remembered only as a cautionary tale. 3 years later, Thomas announced the Jasmine Jefferson Educational Fund, providing scholarships for underprivileged children. When Jasmine turned 10, she proudly told her class that her hero was not a billionaire, but her mother, who taught her that honesty was worth more than gold. And Thomas, standing at Harvard giving a lecture on corporate ethics, summed it up best. "A 6-year-old girl reminded me that integrity is priceless. Richard Blackwood tried to destroy a family with hate. But in the end, that hate built something stronger, a legacy of justice, kindness, and opportunity. If this story touched your heart, subscribe, because sometimes the smallest hands can teach the biggest lessons.